Have you been?
We're doing okay. We're doing okay. We're mainly feeling fortunate that we like our home and we like each other.
Yeah, it helps, doesn't it? It's a
Yeah,
big deal. It's a big
yeah.
deal, man.
It's not. How you doing?
The same. Yeah, like my wife's works from home. My son's in a visual effects school, so he's working from home.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's we're managing okay,
Yeah,
it's like we're getting by. But
yeah. How often do those posters change behind you, or have they been like that forever?
honestly, here's the problem. I'm working from my home, and this is our office, which is
Yeah.
actually boxes and boxes of crap. And so nothing changes in this room
Great,
until I
great.
can actually get in here and make the right now. I figured that was good, and I have Chucky over here.
I think
But
it's a good combination you got going.
you
Fight,
like
Fight
it?
Club, Fight Club was one of the films that really did make me want to be a filmmaker. So I feel like this is relevant to this conversation.
Really? Okay. Well, like let's start with that. That's interesting. But why was it Fight Club? How did that affect you?
So my first job was at a mom and pop video store when I was 14. Sorry, and
No problem.
it was actually illegal for me to be working there at that age, and so they essentially paid me by allowing me to take home as many movies as I wanted, and so that became my film school. And so at the time when I was 14, it was 1999, one of the best years ever for film, and Fight Club came out. And I remember just going home and watching that. And after that ending, I was just like, holy shit. And I just fully kind of started to grasp, like, oh, you can really kind of take huge swings and experiment with film. And so it was Fight Club in the same year, being John Malkovich, all these seminal films, Blair Witch,
Hmm.
American Beauty, American Pie, Notting Hill. All of them came out in '99 when I was working at this video store.
Wow. Well, I had the same experience, by the way. I did exact same with the video store. I worked
Really?
there just so I could return a movie.
Amazing.
So, well, okay, let's talk about this. The rental. Um, I love this film, and
Thanks.
I'm not gonna, I wouldn't just kiss your ass and say I loved it if I didn't. I love this movie, and I've
I
watched it
appreciate that. That
twice.
means a lot.
Well, here's the thing. What I found was interesting when you were going into it. There's a very delicate balance of how you tell the story, and I don't want to give too much away, obviously, in the interview. But
Mhm.
what was your thought process when writing this script and kind of creating this atmosphere, but kind of creating almost two different stories a little bit?
Yeah, so I co-wrote the script with Joe Swanberg, who is, his main strengths lie in character and relationships. And so our goal from the beginning was, let's write a tense relationship drama where the interpersonal issues between the characters are just as thrilling as the fact that, there's a psycho lurking in the shadows. And so yeah, it's more than just a horror movie that relies on jump scares. It really, at its core, it is about these characters, and we use the horror elements to kind of just sprinkle on top to help accentuate all the issues that they're going through.
Yeah, you don't go through there are no real jump scares like the loud blasts of music.
Hmm.
You avoided that very, very well, very easily. And I think that's partially to do because of that. Was that difficult to did you have kind of an idea saying, okay, well, at 20 minutes we need to do this. At 40 minutes we need to do this. Did you have any of that in your head when writing or shooting?
Right. I mean, if anything, the first chunk of the movie, there's nothing overtly very scary going on,
Mm.
but we set these undertones, these creepy undertones that linger from the opening shot. But we were very conscious to at least add these like voyeuristic moments and spread those out enough to remind the audience, like, oh, maybe these people aren't alone. Maybe they are obviously going through stuff in their relationships, but maybe there is an external force happening as well. And so that was an intentional decision. And then when everything starts going crazy, I'm trying to. It's difficult to talk about this movie because I don't want to give anything
I
away.
know.
But but it's like you know, when the relationships start falling apart, that that coincides with the characters finding themselves in more precarious situations
Yeah.
and finding themselves in more physical danger as well. So that was a choice, in addition to everything I just said.
Yeah. So well, okay, let's talk about this because I feel like you're right. It's hard to talk about this movie. I've even like friends of mine. I'm like, oh my god, you got to see this movie. Well, what's it about? It's a drama about people and bad shit happens. That's what I've been saying. But it's also how did it, obviously Airbnbs have become a huge thing. This idea of just going to someone's strange house. What inspired you to write this and tell this story?
Yes, so I was inspired by my own paranoia about the concept of home sharing, and just thinking about how the country is as divided as it's ever been and no one trusts each other, yet we trust staying in the home of a stranger simply because of a few positive reviews online. And you know, while we were filming the movie, there were articles coming out every week about these homeowners who have hidden cameras in their places. And it's all very scary, but at the same time, I still use Airbnb, and I was actually staying in an Airbnb while filming this movie. And I think there's just this disconnect where we are all aware of the risks of staying in a stranger's home, but we never think anything bad will actually happen to
Yeah.
us. And so I was just trying to explore that mentality and why we do subject ourselves to this.
Well, there's also a very realistic tone to this. This doesn't you don't go hyper stylized. You go,
Mhm.
this is vicious. This
Yeah.
is fucking excuse that. It's fucking vicious. And it also feels very realistic. Like
Mhm.
was it always the intention to keep it grounded and keep the scares
Yeah.
scary?
Yeah, so I love horror movies, which is part of the reason I wanted to make this. But the scariest ones to me are the ones that you watch and think, "Oh, that could actually happen to me."
Yeah.
And what I've heard from a lot of people who have watched the film is, you know, they just everyone starts thinking about and reflecting on every rental home they've ever stayed in, wondering if someone was watching. And I hope that the movie does have a lingering effect where it does stay with you. And, you know, anytime you do stay in a rental home in the future, maybe you'll think about this film. And for me, you know, my levels of paranoia since filming this movie have reached their peak where, you know, when I stay in a rental home now, I'm not thinking, are there cameras here? I'm more thinking, I know there are cameras here. It's just whether or not I'm going to find them. And I'm going to go searching for them too.
See, that's the thing, and I think that's why we actually have a Airbnb that we're rent out. Which Paul, please cut that out of the interview if you can. But it's so I get the paranoia, and I get
Mhm.
that. I think and you're right. It's a weird time. Now you mentioned you love horror. That the horror is but you come from a vast whether it's doing these wonderful comedies. You're an amazing comedian, you're a really funny guy.
Thanks, man.
You're an incredible dramatic actor, and now you're doing why horror as a first to direct? Why that
Yeah,
in a
so
comedy?
I think most people do know me from the comedies I've acted in, and everyone's surprised that my directorial debut is a horror film. But as a viewer, there's nothing I love more than a smart genre film. You know, a film that takes the scares seriously, but also prioritizes everything else: the acting, the visuals, the music, the production design, and just approaches it from a more just tasteful, elevated, smart point of view. And
Mhm.
it makes me think about this young group of genre filmmakers who are doing it best. People like Ari Aster, David Robert Mitchell, Jordan Peele, Amy Simons, Sean Durkin, who was a producer on our film.
Mm.
And they all approach their films in a more kind of nuanced atmospheric way, as opposed to just relying too heavily on jump scares. And I think there is a general stigma against horror films where I think a lot of people kind of look down on them and just write them off as being schlocky and cheap. But the truth is, the directors that I just mentioned, like their films have as much merit as any of the heavy dramas that are normally recognized during award season.
100%. Well, I think ever since I look back at the Babadook as the one that
Yeah.
kind of ushered in this kind of,
Yep.
yeah, there's been so many great horror films lately. So many that are beautifully shot,
Yeah. And
beautifully
it
done.
and like all of those films and the Babadook included, it's at their core, it's about the characters.
Yeah.
And yes, they happen to be scary, but these are characters that are relatable and you can latch onto. And there's these bigger themes, like in the Babadook, it was like this big metaphor about just someone dealing with loss and
Mhm.
depression, and
Yeah.
they did it in a really smart way.
I 100% agree. It's one of my favorite films of the past few years. Just
Yeah.
an amazing movie. One other thing I want to talk a little bit about is that you deal with, not only are you dealing with relationship dramas, that
Mhm.
these two couples, two of them brothers. Um, you're also dealing with a few very relatable storylines with, when Sheila applies, they
Yeah.
turn her down. There's a little bit of racism, but it's
Yeah.
not. That's a tricky thing to write into a film without being heavy-handed. How did you approach that?
Yeah, it's not what the film is about, but it is. I felt like it was important to include. So the kind of racial elements were based on friends of mine who have experienced racial profiling when trying to rent one of these homes on a home sharing app, and we use it in the film in a way to create immediate tension between one of the renters who is of Iranian descent and the homeowner who is white. And it's a moment in the movie where everyone else in the scene feels uncomfortable because they are forced to recognize that their friend, played by Sheila Vand, likely experienced racial profiling, and they can't ignore that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's something that does feel very relevant to what's going on today.
Well, it's honestly, you've written these amazing characters for, and these, all these actors, all four of them are
Yeah.
so top notch. Was it easy to figure out, okay, we need Allison, we need Dan? Was that easy for you?
I went about the whole process in somewhat of a backwards, naive way where once Joe and I wrote the script, before taking it out to producers or financiers or anything, I reached out to all of the actors myself. And because I knew, I was like, I know that these people are the best people for these roles. And I don't want anyone telling me, like, you need to cast so and so because they have massive foreign value or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to get my group together and take out this package. And if people don't want to make that movie, then that's okay. But this is the movie that I want to make. And so Alison was, obviously I know Alison very well. She was the only person I knew before this whole process. And the truth is, so I actually wasn't originally intending on directing the movie. I was going to
Oh.
act in it. I was going to play the role of Josh that ultimately went to Jeremy Allen White. Uh, and as much as I wanted Allison in it with me, we would have been playing characters where she would have been my sister-in-law, and that felt a little weird. So
I don't
when
know
when
why.
I when I decided to not act in it because I wanted to just focus on directing and my responsibilities behind the camera. Obviously, Alison was the first person I went to, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad it worked out that way because I've always known that she was incredibly talented, but I got to see her on like a new level and just realize just how unique and special she is as an actor. And so she made my job really easy. And so did everyone else. I mean, with my DP, we planned out a lot of longer takes where these scenes almost play out like a play, where it's these wider angles where everyone's in the scene at the same time. And so if we had one weak link, it wouldn't have worked. We would have had to chop it up.
Yeah.
But everyone was so locked in and so good. And who can I talk about? I mean, Dan Stevens. Um, I think Dan, the projects that I like him in the most are actually the genre projects, like The Guest and his TV show Legion.
Mhm.
And as great as he is in those projects, he's playing characters that are slightly heightened. So I was excited to see him in a role that felt a little more grounded and human. And I think Dan's one of his biggest skills is he's really great at playing these slightly villainous characters where some actors play villains and you immediately turn on them. You're like, I don't like you. But with Dan, he's having so much fun playing the villain. Like he really relishes in it that you can't help but get caught up in it. And you're like sort of rooting for him even when he's making unethical decisions. So I think that's a really impressive thing that he's able to pull off. Quickly, I'll talk about the other two.
Okay.
Jeremy Allen White, who is mainly known for Shameless, and I've just admired him from afar for a long time. He has this very raw, unpredictable energy, but at the same time, it's just so grounded. And he really is one of the most naturally talented actors I've ever seen. And every day he was on set, all of us behind the camera would just look at each other and be like, why is he not the biggest star in the world? And so I'm excited for people to see him in this role and to see where he goes. And then finally, Sheila Vand, people mostly know her from A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night,
Yeah.
where she plays a vampire, and she's incredible. But when you're playing a vampire, you don't get to emote very much. And so the project that I saw her in that made me realize she was perfect for my movie is this smaller film called We the Animals. And she has a smaller part in that film, but in a really kind of finite amount of time, she's able to show her whole range where Sheila has such like an inner power and strength to her, but then, you know, at any moment she can just crumble and be so vulnerable. And she really kind of puts that on display in our movie too.
Yeah. Well, dude, I got to tell you, I'll just for a last question, just what's up next for you after this, after a big undertaking like this?
Yeah, so I do have a pretty strong idea of what I would want to do for the sequel if I got the chance to do that.
Oh, please.
But it also during the quarantine, Alison and I wrote a new script. It's actually a romantic comedy,
Oh.
and we did it for a couple reasons. We love the genre, but also we were looking at kind of the landscape of romantic comedies over the past decade or so, and we just started to realize like the bar has been set pretty low, where they have a tendency to have this like overly bright aesthetic, kind of like me right now. But and then also
I like it. It looks good on you.
and then also like the story and the characters are generally pretty silly and over the top. And so we started looking at some of the classics like When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, My Best Friend's Wedding, Pretty Woman. And they're all very grounded, and the acting is actually really great. And then also they're shot like dramas, like they look good. And so we just started to wonder like why people don't approach romantic comedies from that kind of smarter point of view. And so that's what we try to do. And so that's something that I will hopefully direct and that she'll hopefully be able to act in.
Well, dude, I gotta tell you, I love your comedy. I love you as an actor, and you've made one of the best goddamn horror films of the year. I mean, it's honestly stunning.
That means a lot, man. That really does. And
And you're one of my favorite people to talk to. I mean, honestly, you're just a pleasure every time.
I was about to say we've talked a lot over the years, and it's always nice to see your face.
Yeah, it is, and especially in these crazy times, it's you put a smile on my face, my friend.
Awesome, man. Back at you.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Congratulations, and
Thank you.
cheers. Congrats.
Hope to talk soon.
Cool. Bye.
See ya.
Bye, buddy.